Today we're diving into War 124, breaking down all the major battles and key events that took place. This has easily been one of my favorite wars of the year so far. Both factions experienced intense highs and crushing lows. For some context, the previous war, War 123, was unusually short, lasting only 11 days. That quick conclusion gave players time to rest, play other games, and prepare for what was to come in War 124. This war lasted 39 days and featured some of the most intense back and forth battles I've seen in a long time. The momentum constantly shifted, making for an unforgettable war. I believe the ending of this war surprised us all. Let's break down how it all played out. On day 1 of the war, the Colonials swiftly captured the mainland capitals of Marbin Hollow and King's Cage, while the Wardens launched a naval assault to seize the island capital of Fisherman's Row. These opening moves set the initial victory points at 21 for the Colonials and 18 for the Wardens. Colonial regiments 141CR, 1CMD, JGF, CH, and others led the charge into King's Cage. They quickly advanced through the Manacle, Slipchain, and East Knife, pushing Warden forces across the northern bridge. In the east, the fiercest fighting erupted at 3rd Chapter, where Colonial forces slowly encircled the Wardens with bunkers and fortifications. After demolishing the bridge connecting 3rd Chapter to Weepholm, Warden logistics were cut off, leading to the eventual fall of 3rd Chapter, marking another strong opening victory for the Colonials. Meanwhile, in the eastern island chain known as the Fingers, the Wardens launched an invasion of Fort Barley. From there, they pushed across the island toward the Plank House, successfully driving the Colonials off the island and establishing a foothold of their own. During day 2, the Wardens once again demonstrated their dominance over the seas and island territories. They successfully secured all of Tempest Island and nearly expelled the Colonials from Fisherman's Row. Their naval strength was on full display, but while the Wardens focused on the islands, the Colonials leaned into their advantage on the mainland. Colonial forces made significant territorial gains across King's Cage, the Lynn of Mercy, Deadlands, and Marbin Hollow, laying a strong foundation for the battles to come in the following days. Back at Fort Barley and the Fingers, the Wardens were nearly overrun as the Colonials reached the last bunker base before the Relic. Despite putting up a determined defense, the Wardens were outgunned and outsupplied, eventually losing the bunker base as the Colonials began to siege the Relic. Supplies dwindled fast, first rifles, then shirts, forcing Warden players to scavenge for weapons from Colonial corpses. During a desperate moment, a wave of 15 to 20 Colonials mammon rushed the Relic base. Though some were taken down, the defenders were eventually overwhelmed. However, the base held. It was repaired, and the Wardens managed to stabilize with the gear they found on the ground. One Warden player had this to say about the battle: "We were under constant machine gun fire and mammon rushes kept coming. I thought we were going to lose the base until a Logi ship came in with over 10,000 BMATs and 1,000 mammons. They didn't bring any weapons, so we had to use the Colonials. We were able to hold Fort Barley and push the Colonials back." End quote. It was reported that this battle went on for over 8 hours, and players said they had a lot of fun fighting over this island. By day 3, the war fronts began to slow as both factions dug in for a long fight. On the western front, the battle for Farranek Coast turned into a brutal stalemate. The region would change hands countless times over the next 35 days, becoming the deadliest region of the war with over 900,000 casualties. At the heart of this bloodbath stood Jade Cove, where the infamous ramp was both praised and cursed. Its steep incline became a symbol of relentless assault and stubborn defense. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the map in the east, Inless Shore saw a similar struggle. It would be the second deadliest region, with over 800,000 casualties. As both sides clashed endlessly over the city of Saltbrook, for the next 25 days, the city changed hands repeatedly. The Colonial Regiment 420 and others fought bitterly against the Warden Regiments 10th, 102 VK, 27th, and more. Despite countless pushes and counterattacks, neither side could hold Saltbrook for long. Each gain was quickly met with an equally fierce counteroffensive. During the 4th day, the Colonials finally secured a major breakthrough in the Fingers, pushing the Wardens out of the islands and establishing a fortified foothold. However, the Warden harassment had already taken its toll, disrupting Colonial logistics and delaying their momentum, consequences that would be felt later in the war. In the central regions, where the most intense battles were forming, the Colonials succeeded in driving the Wardens out of the Deadlands and the Lynn of Mercy. With the capture of Ulster Falls and the Lynn of Mercy, the Colonials raised their total to 22 victory points, while the Wardens dropped to 17. These victory point totals would remain locked for the next 23 days, with only brief and temporary changes occurring between Saltbrook and Jade Cove. This underscored the grueling stalemate that was beginning to set in. Before being forced out of the Lynn of Mercy, the Wardens made a desperate final stand at the base known as the Mud Hole, constructed by the Warden Regiment in Dragoons. They were completely encircled and cut off from logistic support. the defenders had just 1,000 BMATs to hold the line. They managed to resist for over 3 hours, fending off wave after wave of Colonial attacks, but as supplies ran dry and the Colonial swarm showed no signs of stopping, the mud hole eventually fell. One Warden player had this to say about the fight: "It was a lot of fun defending it, and final standing. Good fight, collies. I hope to not be encircled next time." End quote. On day 5, the Colonials launched their first major attack into Callahan's Passage. However, despite repeated attempts, they failed to secure any lasting ground for the next 12 days, as the Wardens consistently pushed them back towards the Deadlands every time they entered the region. One of the most contested areas was the Latch, which came under constant assault from Colonial forces. Despite all of this, the Wardens held firm, having established a defensive line designed to repel repeated attacks. Holding the Latch was crucial, as it served as the final barrier protecting Crumbling Post, which was home to the region's refinery. The refinery was a vital supply hub, providing the bulk of the basic materials used for Warden defenses throughout Callahan's Passage. By keeping the Colonials away from it, the Wardens were able to maintain their foothold in the region. Meanwhile, all other fronts remained relatively stable, with no significant territorial gains made by either side. During day 6, the stalemate continued in the capital cities of Jade Cove and Ulster Falls, with both factions locked in brutal back-and-forth fighting. Despite their efforts, neither side was able to establish a lasting foothold in either city. With their defenses firmly established in Callahan's Passage, the Wardens shifted focus and attempted to break back into the Deadlands. However, their efforts were repeatedly repelled by Task Force Vulture, a seasoned Colonial regiment specializing in artillery warfare. Task Force Vulture anchored the Deadlands defense, using precise and overwhelming artillery fire to blunt every Warden offensive. Anytime Warden forces tried to push into the region, they were met with devastating shelling. Reports estimated that over 50,000 Warden troops were eliminated by Task Force Vulture's bombardments over the course of several days. Their firepower played a decisive role in keeping the Deadlands firmly in Colonial hands. On day 7, the Colonials launched a major offensive in Claustra, rapidly overwhelming Warden positions and forcing them to retreat north into Weathered Expanse. While the assault appeared to be a significant victory for the Colonials, the gains would prove to be short-lived. That same day, Colonial forces once again attempted to seize Saltbrook and Inlet Shore, continuing the relentless struggle for control of the city. One Colonial player had this to say about the battle: "Some of us from 420 and 11E gathered up some artillery guns and shelled Saltbrook for hours. Though we were not able to push into the city, we were able to take out all their defenses." End quote. The constant campaign for Saltbrook would become a traumatic experience for many involved from both factions. On day 8, the Wardens mounted a strong counteroffensive, reclaiming ground in key regions such as the Linn of Mercy and Inlet Shore. However, all other fronts remained relatively stable once again, with no major territorial changes elsewhere. During day 9, the Colonials once again reclaimed Saltbrook and Inlet Shore, forcing the Wardens to retreat north towards Stilcan Shelf. The offensive was led by the Regiment 420, Somme, and others, launching from the outskirts of Saltbrook. The initial Colonial assault was stalled outside the city due to strong Warden defenses. After hours of fighting and mounting casualties, field artillery finally broke the stalemate, allowing the Colonials to enter the city. After this, fierce urban combat followed. Eventually, a surge of Colonial reinforcements turned the tide and overwhelmed the Warden defenders. After about 5 hours, the Colonials cleared the Warden defenses and captured Saltbrook once again. One Warden player had this to say about the final moments in Saltbrook: "The fall of Saltbrook will be remembered. Burnt out tanks and destroyed positions everywhere. A true bloodbath." End quote. On day 10, the Colonials managed to bring down Crumbling Post in Callahan's Passage for the first time. However, their foothold was short-lived, as the Wardens quickly regrouped and drove them back out of the region. Over in Westgate, the Warden regiments, TBP, Knight, and others conducted a naval invasion on the Gallows in Westgate. The purpose of this invasion was to destroy some Colonial fortifications and take some pressure off the Fairneck coast front. One Warden player had this to say about the invasion: "Ultimately, the invasion had to pull out due to Colonial QRF overrunning us, but it was a very successful invasion in regards of blowing up strategic targets." End quote. While the operation disrupted Colonial front lines in the west, the mainland fronts remained largely unchanged elsewhere. But out in the distant islands, something was beginning to stir, a quiet shift that would soon escalate into something far greater. On day 11, the mainland front lines remained largely largely unchanged once again, with capital cities continuing to shift back and forth between the two factions. However, out at sea, the Wardens launched a two-pronged naval invasion, striking at the same time at Stem and Landing on the west side of the map and the Fingers in the east. By day 12, the Wardens had fully secured Stem and Landing, capturing the entire area within a single day. However, the Colonial forces on the islands were far from defeated. Fierce resistance in the Fingers successfully pushed the Wardens back, allowing the Colonials to maintain their hold for now. On day 13, the Wardens persisted in their attempts to gain control of the Fingers, but the Colonial defenses held strong, successfully keeping them at bay. On the mainland, the fronts still remained stable, with no significant territorial changes from either side. By day 14, the war had already surpassed 2 million casualties on both sides. Neither faction was willing to give up, and they were fiercely defending every inch of ground. During day 15, the Colonials advanced into Stilcan Shelf, marking their furthest northern push on the eastern front for the remainder of the war. However, the Wardens quickly counterattacked that same day, driving them back into Inlet Shore. Out at sea, the Wardens were once again preparing for another naval invasion, targeting the Fingers. Across all other fronts, the war remained steady, with no major territorial changes. On day 16, the Wardens completed their conquest of the Fingers, seizing full control of the region. From this point forward, the Colonials would never reclaim any of their island territories for the remainder of the war. Once again, the Wardens demonstrated their naval superiority. One Colonial player had this to say about the last stand in the Fingers: "A small group of us held out in burning concrete bases in the south while trying to hold the Wardens back. Some of us tried to escape and evacuate what we could to Reavers, but were taken out." End quote. However, the day wasn't a total loss for the Colonials. On the mainland, they finally established a foothold in Callahan's Passage, successfully capturing Crumbling Post. This marked the beginning of the Colonial campaign through the heart of the map, setting the stage for battles to come. During day 17, the Colonials successfully pushed the Wardens out of the Linn of Mercy and began establishing a fully fortified base in the region. With their position secured, they soon continued their campaign northward into Stone Cradle and the Moors, gaining momentum on the central front. On day 18, the Colonials continued their slow but steady push north, securing another key territory in Callahan's Passage and laying the groundwork for future offensives. The Colonial Regiment Task Force Vulture played a crucial role in the campaign. Leveraging their artillery skills, they dismantled Warden fortifications and repelled repeated counterattacks. Their efforts not only broke the stalemate in the region, but also severely weakened the Warden's ability to launch further attacks in Callahan's Passage. Day 19 marked the halfway point of the war. The Colonials pressed further north into Stone Cradle, successfully capturing the city of Fading Light, a key strategic location due to its refinery. The city would soon become a vital supply hub, fueling the Colonial advance deeper into Warden territory. Meanwhile, the brutal stalemates in Farragut Coast to the west and Inlet Shore to the east continued to rage on, with both regions constantly changing hands as they had throughout the war. With over 20 days of war behind both factions, victory was still up for grabs. The Wardens had leveraged their naval supremacy to great effect, while the Colonials were steadily pushing north through the mainland's central regions. One player had this to say about the war: "It's a toss-up. Both sides are in good position. Wardens getting industry and Old Captain allows them to put pressure on the east side, while Colley's managing to get the frontline refinery in Callahan's Passage and one in Fading Light puts them in a good position middle and west." End quote. Over the next 18 days, the battlefield would begin to shift more dramatically, setting the stage for the decisive chapters to come. During day 21, the Colonials continued to chip away at the southern territories of Stone Cradle, as they prepared for a larger assault on the capital city of Buckler Sound to the north. On this same day, it was reported that Saltbrook and Inlet Shore had changed hands 36 times, a staggering figure that may well be a record for a capital city in a single war. No doubt Jade Cove wasn't far behind this statistic. I haven't mentioned them much this war, but Marben Hollow and the Claustra have remained largely unchanged since the start of the war. Their stagnant front lines are shaped by difficult terrain and endless bridge battles. On day 22, total casualties for both factions surpassed 3 million. That same day, the Wardens launched a naval invasion in the region of Origin, located in the southwestern corner of the map. The battle raged on for several hours, but despite their efforts, the Wardens failed to capture any territory or inflict significant damage. During day 23, the Colonials began pushing into the Moors, deep in Warden backline territory. While the Wardens mounted a strong resistance, the momentum had clearly shifted. By this point in the war, many on the battlefield believed the Colonials had the war firmly in their grasp. Elsewhere, massive tank battles erupted across multiple fronts, as super heavy tanks made their debut on the battlefield. Despite the intensity intensity of these clashes, no major territorial changes occurred on the fronts. On day 24, the Wardens began probing into Reaver's Pass from the Fingers, threatening Colonial control in the east. This maneuver split Colonial forces in Endless Shore, marking the beginning of their collapse on the eastern front. Meanwhile, in the northwest, the Wardens continued to offer stubborn resistance, but the Colonials pressed forward, maintaining their momentum in the central and northern regions. During day 25, the Colonials broke through massive Warden concrete fortifications in the moors, pushing the defenders north toward their regional capital. The offensive was spearheaded by Regiments 404, Air, SAF, and others, whose efforts paved the way for deeper advances into the moors, and set the stage for future assaults on the capital city. Elsewhere, no significant changes occurred across the other fronts. Day 26 marked the first significant shift in victory points since the war began. The Colonials launched an assault on the capital city of Buckler Sound in Stone Cradle, swiftly capturing it from the Wardens. This victory put Colonial victory points to 23, while the Wardens dropped to 16. Colonial morale soared. The Colonial regiments Delta and ATR celebrated by crafting 1,000 flags for players to use in Abandoned Ward. During day 27, the Colonials would continue north with their high morale. They successfully captured all of Stone Cradle, the Moors, and Callahan's Passage, raising their victory points to 25, while the Wardens dropped to 14. Spirits ran high in the northwestern regions as the Colonials gained momentum. However, what the Colonials didn't realize was that this would be the last day they lost Saltbrook and Endless Shore, a city they would never reclaim for the remainder of the war. On day 28, the Wardens would start to push back. The Colonials had managed to push all the way up into Reaching Trail, and just outside the capital city of Brodytown. This is as far north as the Colonials would go the rest of the war. Despite high Colonial morale, the Wardens remained determined and refused to surrender. For the next 10 days, the Wardens would go on the offensive. One player had this to say about the state of the war: "Foxhole isn't a war game, it's a shoving match, and when one side realizes the other is the stronger one, they know there's no turning it around." End quote. On day 29, casualties surged past 4 million for both factions. This day marked the beginning of the collapse of the Colonial front lines. In the east, the Wardens captured all of Endless Shore, forcing the Colonials into a final desperate stand at Iron Junction before being pushed out. Meanwhile, in the west, a nuke site was established in Westgate for the Colonials, with the weapon targeted at Bonehaft and Fairnat Coast. The goal was to break the stalemate at the bridge in Bonehaft, clearing the way for the Colonials to advance toward Nevish Line. Notably, this was one of the first nukes in recent Foxhole history that was not aimed at a capital city. On day 30, the Wardens pushed the Colonials back on every front line. For the first time in the war, the Wardens even managed to advance into Allode's Bight. Though things were not looking well for the Colonials, I can tell you that as someone who played on the Colonial side this war, that we were not about to give up. Many of us were still fighting to win this war. On day 31, the nuke launched successfully from Westgate, destroying Bonehaft. This rally energized the Colonials, enabling them to push back in the northwestern territories once again. Meanwhile, on the eastern front, the Wardens broke through Reaver's Pass and rapidly began sieging the capital city of Keelhaul. Day 32 was one of the worst for the Colonials, as nearly every front fell to the Wardens. After 31 days of intense back and forth fighting, Marben Hollow and the Claustra were fully captured by the Wardens. This breakthrough allowed them to push into the Deadlands and the Drowned Vale for the first time during the war. On this day, the Wardens took the lead in victory points for the first time, holding 21 to the Colonials' 18. On day 33, the Wardens steadily pushed the Colonials back on the western front, reclaiming their lost territory inch by inch. This day also marked the beginning of one of the war's largest battles, the Battle for Terminus. Over the next 5 days, the capital city of Therizo would endure relentless assaults from the Wardens. On day 34, the Warden offensive slowed somewhat, but continued to gradually reclaim territory in the Deadlands, the Drowned Vale, and Shackled Chasm, though most players remained focused on Terminus, fully aware that if the capital city of Therizo were to fall, it would likely signal the end of the war. During day 35, the Warden swiftly pushed the Colonials out of the Drowned Vale and launched new attacks into Umbral Wildwood, a region untouched by fighting until now. The Colonials continued to fight fiercely, defending as best as they could, but by the end of the day, the Wardens held 23 victory points, while the Colonials stood at 16. On day 36, the Wardens captured all of Fairnat Coast and launched their first attacks into Westgate since the start of the war. They were met with fierce resistance at the Chambient Line, a massive concrete fortification built specifically to hold the Wardens back. The Wardens would siege this base until the war's end. Towards the end of the day, though, the Wardens had also captured Ulster Falls in the Linn of Mercy and Abandoned Ward in the Deadlands, bringing their total to 25 victory points. On day 37, casualties for both sides surpassed 5 million. Had the war continued for another week and a half, I believe it was on track to set a new record for total casualties in a single war. On this day, the Wardens would take the capital city of Hermit's Rest and Umbral Wildwood, putting them at 26 victory points. Meanwhile, the battle for Terminus still raged on. The Colonials threw everything they had at the Wardens, drawing resources from seaports and storage depots, using everything to defend against the Warden assault. Also on this day, the Colonials earned the Fortified Achievement, awarded for surviving more than 4 days while controlling less than 40% of all towns. While achievements don't provide tangible rewards, this one was a meaningful morale boost. Even on the brink of defeat, the Colonials had fought hard and refused to log off when the situation started to look grim 7 days ago. On day 38, the Wardens launched their full assault against the Colonials. They captured the Manacle and King's Cage, Fairmore and Lockmore, Silk Farms and Shackled Chasm, and Remnant Villa in Great March, bringing their total to 30 victory points, just one shy of winning the war. The Chambient Line in Westgate had fallen, leaving the final battles to rage between Westgate and Terminus, each city positioned to be the last stronghold to fall. Eventually, a Warden regiment named CADF sailed a longhook up the river and parked it right by the Colonial seaport. The Wardens had managed to destroy the seaport and push Warden forces from the longhook towards the Thorizo town hall. After over an hour of combat, the longhook was finally destroyed by surrounding Colonial forces. The longhook mission was considered a massive morale and tactical success. At the start of day 39, the final day of the war, after several more hours of intense fighting, Thorizo fell, bringing War 124 to an end. Well done to the Colonials that held strong in Thorizo. You put up one hell of a fight, and GG's to the Wardens for winning War 124. Overall, I thought this was an excellent war. Around day 25, I genuinely believed the Colonials would secure the victory, but the Wardens showed incredible resilience and launched a massive counterattack that swept through Colonial territory. Comebacks in Foxhole may not happen often, but they are very real, and this war clearly showed how important morale is in the game. Thank you to everyone who played in this war. I really enjoyed myself and I hope you did as well. If you have any battle reports you'd like to share for future Foxhole Wars, feel free to join my Discord. I'll leave a link in the description below. I look forward to seeing you all in War 125. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support. Make sure to subscribe for more Foxhole content. I'll see you out on the battlefield. Cheers.